I'm the luckiest guy on the planet. Never in my wildest dreams did I think this would happen. And I tried to enjoy every minute of it.
What is your take on the tariffs?
If we were strategic in how we did them, great. Tariffs are a beautiful word then.
Do you see countries like China and all backing down?
We're playing chicken. Nobody looks at healthcare in this country and says, oh, we got it right. Once you realize that the data tells you you're wrong, you got to pivot. If you're dogmatic about it, you could be dead.
I also read that you have some beef with Elon. People are so worried that there's a massive recession coming.
I don't know. I think it's possible. I think we need to cut spending. Don't get me wrong, but right now we're too ready, fire, aim.
Welcome to Biohack-it, where we are redefining wellness for the modern era. I'm your host, Iman, here to help you optimize your mind, body, and spirit. Every Thursday, we dive deep into biohacking, holistic health, and cutting-edge science, breaking down the latest research on longevity, chronic disease prevention, and much more. We're challenging outdated wellness norms and having authentic, unfiltered conversations about women's health, fertility, longevity, and everything in between. Follow Biohack-it now and start living your best, healthiest life on your own terms. Remember that curiosity heals. Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Biohack-it. Today my guest is quite literally a shark. Let me give you a few more hints so you can figure out who my guest is. He is revolutionizing pharma with cost-plus drugs. He's always spotting and looking for the next unicorn in business, and he is one of the most brilliant billionaires out there. If you haven't guessed it yet, my guest today is Mark Cuban, and I'm so excited to talk about optimizing his health. I've heard he's big into gut health and what he does to succeed and pick his strategies when it comes to high performance, but also what he does for his own health and wellness. Mark, thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Having me.
So I wanted to kickstart because the podcast is obviously called Biohack-it. I wanted to talk about your personal health and wellness journey. What are some of the hacks that you do? What are you currently doing for longevity?
So my current hacks, if you will, are I track everything I eat and drink. Yeah. So I use my FitnessPal every day for every single thing I do, track my sleep, wear my Apple Watch, all the time, work out 5 days a week, trying to decide, what my right schedule is, track my HRV, just whatever data I can get a hold of. I tend to get my blood tested every 3 to 4 months so I know my baselines and anything that's going out of whack, and just try to stay literate in terms of what I eat. I try to eat, natural foods without added sugar, and I don't do a lot of supplements. I do some melatonin at night, some magnesium at night, and some iron in the morning because I'm a pescatarian, so I don't always get enough iron.
I was just going to ask you, what is your diet? It's a pescatarian. Yeah. And have you checked yourself for like mercury levels and things
all
like that?
Stuff. I check for everything.
Amazing. And where are you sourcing a lot of your food from? Is it from different farms or,
No, I don't go that far.
Okay.
I'll trust Amazon and Whole Foods, but I buy the brands that I know and like.
Right.
I'll buy salad kits that are just pre-washed and stuff like that and make my own salads. Yeah.
And what are some of the technology? Because I know you're big onto AI and stuff. What technology are you really excited about that's coming out, or things that you're testing and trying out currently?
Obviously ChatGPT and the likes and their competitors. I like to ask questions, and I let you go to Perplexity, Gemini, and all of them, and ask the same question to get different feedback and see what they all have to say. I'm looking for more sensors that come out. Other than just the iWatch. I've played with Whoop, I played with Aura, and I just like the iWatch better because it gives me other information as well.
Right.
But I don't, in terms of just new stuff, nothing that really I'm focused on or just really excited about.
Right. And then obviously you're also the founder of Cost Plus Drugs.
Right.
And what kind of inspired you to start this company?
So I got a cold email from a Dr. Alex Oshmayansky a few years ago, and he wanted to create what's called a compounding pharmacy in Denver because there are drugs that go on short supply that are really needed. Pediatric cancer drugs, other things that are used in operation, Pitocin. And to me, that was just insane that these things went on short supply. And it was right around the time the Pharma Bro was going to jail. And I was asking Alex, I'm like, how does this dude just manipulate the prices of this stuff? And so started digging into it, and it was obvious that the pharmacy side of the medical world was not transparent at all. So we created costplusdrugs.com, and where we made a big change was if you go to our site, costplusdrugs.com, and put in the name of a medication, and we carry 2,500 of them. If we have it, it'll come right up, but we'll show you our cost. That's different. Nobody else does that. And we'll show you our markup, which is only 15%. And then there's shipping and handling a little bit, $5 for the pharmacist review. And that's it. And by doing that, our costs are just our prices are dramatically cheaper than anywhere else. And so we started shipping in January of 2022, and it's just been a rocket ship ever since.
And generally knowing that there's transparency doesn't exist with, drugs of this matter, but also what do you think about transparency when it comes to the pharmaceutical industry in general?
Well, you want more, right? There's not enough. And, you want to know what's in something. You want to know where it's from, and things vary, but particularly now with all the tariff stuffs being discussed it's hard to know, but there's no such thing as bad information. There's misinformation, but there's no such thing as having too much information.
I think it's nice to hear you say that because I think we have to push for more transparency, efficacy, and really try to bring more studies and research also to the limelight. Because not only pharmaceutical backed, but they're also looking at holistic methods to treat people.
Oh yeah, there's no question, right? I support a company called labdoor.com, which takes supplements and tells you exactly what's in them, right? Because for drugs, at least, we know what's in it. There's an FDA that is supposed to check everything and review everything. But for supplements, we take more supplements than we do drugs, and we have no idea what's in them. I mean, and then in our food, I always look at the nutrition label, but 99% of the people I have no idea what 99% of those ingredients.
Right, absolutely.
So it's kind of a crapshoot. And so, I also support a group called Food Fight Inc. One of my best friends, Todd Wagner, started it, and it's all about healthy food. Because I do believe food is medicine.
Absolutely.
And so, what they've done is go to the state of California and gotten all the different colored dyes removed from school lunches there. And they continue to work on programs like that. I also have a company called foodguides.com, and it's more for people with intestinal issues like GERD and, acid reflux and all that, because it's hard for them to figure out what they're supposed to eat and how.
Right.
And getting recipes and products. And that actually has some AI in it, so you can ask your questions. And give me a recipe because this is how I feel. This is how my stomach feels. And work with a company called Yuka. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Yuka's amazing.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah.
So if you're in the store, you can scan the barcode and find out actually what's in it and what funky ingredients, and they rate it. So I've tried to really be a participant and an investor and supporter of everything I can.
So my day job, besides obviously the podcast, is I'm a marketer. I own a really big marketing agency. And one of the biggest things that annoys me is the amount of unregulation around supplementation, but also the fact that statements that they're able to make and get away with.
They can say almost anything. It's almost like food. You can say almost anything about something.
It's greenwashing.
Healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah. And greenwashing, exactly right. Or, sane washing and yeah, it's with supplements specifically. And what's even worse is you go on Amazon because it's so convenient and you get all these Chinese companies or foreign companies where, you can tell they're, it's just, Shine or Temu Light, and you have no idea what you're putting in your body. And, that's ridiculous. And the fact that we let them get away with that is even more ridiculous. And Amazon is the worst of them because, companies that sell these pharmaceuticals, they don't even have to have a nexus. They don't have to have an American company or anything that, you could go after if somebody gets, injured or hurt or killed. So it's just the way it's handled right now is ridiculously bad.
I mean, Amazon is known for selling fake, basically supplements. Yeah, junk on the market, and there's no way to do it. And even if a brand, by the way, guys, if you're listening, has a storefront, please buy straight from the brand's website because they repackage it and kind of remarket.
You just don't know how
you just don't know.
Turned or what,
Exactly. And so this is going on all the time. And this is whole back system. I was speaking to this one founder for a probiotic company called Just Thrive, and they said they had to get into a whole legal thing with Amazon because they still had people, bootleggers selling stuff on the back, and their consumers were not getting the right product.
Off, right? They'll knock it off and make it seem like it's the exact same product.
Exactly.
I mean, it's they just take the data, the output from Amazon and track stuff to see what's selling,
right? And
they knock it off. And when you knock it off, people get hurt.
And so we talked about your health journey and stuff. From a spiritual perspective or meditation, are you into any of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I like to just lay down. I have these VR goggles I put on. Okay. I listen to violet noise. That's my thing, right? And it's just to relax me and to, realign me and all that. So it's great.
And how often do you do that practice?
Every day.
Every day?
Yeah, for 4 or 5 minutes.
And so do you have a morning routine then?
Well, yeah, my morning routine is wake up, look at my email, get it out of the way because I try not to do meetings or calls just as much as I can be, so I can control my schedule. And then get out of bed, stretch, do my VR stuff with the goggles and the violet noise. And then from there, go to the gym and work out and then get to work.
And then how many hours now currently are you still working a day? Like, what's your schedule like?
My whole day.
Yeah. Until you go to bed?
Yeah. I mean, other than time with my kids, or working out, or going to Mavs games. Yeah, I mean, because I like what I do.
Yeah.
I don't look at it like, oh my God, I got to go to work. Oh shit, right? It's like, no, this is like what I do, who I am.
Right.
And, with Cost Plus Drugs, we're on a mission, and when you're on a mission, it's not really work.
Right. I want to ask you, for somebody who looks for the next unicorn, you're always investing in like businesses and stuff. When people are pitching to you, right? There's obviously the founder, they're pitching to you. The business plan has to make sense. The numbers have to make sense. But what is the emotion or inspiration that goes, you know what? I'm going to bet on that person.
Really how much shit they have to them, right?
Okay.
Will they run through walls? Do they love what they're doing? Do they believe so much in their product? All they want to do is sell it and work on it. Yeah. You've got to, look, you do this. You've got to believe in your product.
Absolutely.
You've got to believe in what you do. Otherwise, forget it. It's not going to happen. And so I look for that. And obviously the product or service has to be differentiated, unique in some way.
Right. But sometimes people only have like 15, 20 minutes to pitch to you. How do you pick up on, is it energetic? Is it a feeling?
It's how they tell me why their product is different and unique.
Okay.
Because I kind of look for, wow, why didn't I think of that type thing, right? It's like, oh, that's a good idea. Why didn't I think of that? And then, okay, well, who's your competition and what's going to make you stand out? And then why would people buy this or do this or work with you? What makes it compelling enough for them to change their the current behaviors?
And is there anything when you look back that you're like, damn it, I should have invested in that?
Oh, yeah,
like,
a ton of them. I mean, Uber is the first thing that come to mind because the guy who started Travis, I had invested and helped him in his previous company, Uber. And he came to me and I kind of over-negotiated because I thought it was going to be a hard ride, which it was. But yeah, that one, that was.
And he never called you back?
No. So shit happens.
And what about like, I know Poppy had come to Shark Tank and originally
I didn't like
pitched.
Poppy though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you stick to that one. You're like, I don't care if it's sold to Pepsi. I don't care.
There's two things. One, I got to like it.
Okay.
Right. And it was like the apple cider type taste. And I just think that is nasty. Like my wife would drink it some and I'm like, I tried it.
No way I'm having that.
No way. That's just yeah, if you brought up the Shark Tank thing, I think the look on my face said it all. But the other side of it is there's certain businesses that are consumer-driven, consumer products where you have to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to have a chance.
Right.
And, whatever I would have invested in Shark Tank would have been diluted unless I kept on putting in millions and millions of dollars. And so I typically don't like those crapshoots unless it's just an amazing product.
Right.
Like we have a company called Alyssa's Healthy Cookies, which I eat every morning. I literally take them when I travel.
And they're clean or what's in them?
They're 100% clean, right? They're called cookies, but protein, fiber, low net carbs, 8 cookies in a container that's only 360 calories. Okay. So, for my sweet tooth, so I keep them on the counter in the kitchen. I travel with them. I have them for breakfast every single morning so that I can get energy, and it's clean. Just a few ingredients. And so that company, a guy named Doug, emailed me, God, it's been 12 years now. He was basically living out of his van. And he was like
cold emailed you. Okay.
And living out of his van. And he said, I got this product. And he sent me these cookies. And he sent me this one big cookie. First thing I do is look at the nutritional label. And boom, 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 like I just said, high fiber, high protein, etc. And I opened it up, took a bite. I was like, oh, this is good, right? So then I took it out of the packaging and it fell apart. I'm like, that's why he hasn't been able to sell. No one eats a cookie. When you try to eat the cookie, it falls apart. So I had him change it into little mini bites. And those mini bites, like literally will do $25 million this year in sales. And like I put in, $250,000, $500,000 in total, I think. And it makes about $12 million a year in profit.
That's insane.
It's insane.
Wow.
And we've no marketing, no advertising. It's all word of mouth.
I was going to ask you, from all the people that you've mentored or the companies that you have championed or invested in, who has excited you most when they came out on the other side, right? Who have you loved working with?
All of them, like they're all my children, right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're not all best friends, obviously, but I mean, that's why I did Shark Tank, right? 15 years of it, because I like sending the message that the American dream is alive and well, that anybody from anywhere in this country from any circumstances can come out and stand on the carpet and pitch us. Yeah. And the millions of people are going to be seeing this. And so you have a chance really to, throw rocket fuel on your business and anything is possible.
If you're serious about your long-term health, there's one vitamin you're probably not getting enough of. No matter how clean your diet is, nearly 97% of people in the Western world are deficient in vitamin K2, and most don't even realize it. That's why K2 is nearly non-existent in modern diets, but it plays a huge role in heart health, circulation, bone strength, and even brain function. So here's why it matters so much. Low K2 levels can show up as weak bones, stiff muscle, bruising, wrinkles, and even forgetfulness and brain fog. It also is linked to major cardiovascular and bone health issues down the line. That's why I'm so excited about Just Thrive's K27, the only K2 supplement on the market that comes from 100% organic chickpea natto, the best source of K2. Delivers 320 mcg of pharmaceutical grade K27, the optimal daily dose. Has guaranteed potency so your body actually absorbs what it needs. It's microbiologist formulated, clinically tested, and supports your heart, bones, brain, and circulation at the source. I've made it a part of my daily routine, and I think you'll love it too. Check it out at justthrivehealth.com and use code Biohack-it for a discount and enjoy. You are really the American dream. So when I was doing my research and stuff, you came from humble beginnings, you kind of scaled up and you sold your first company for a few million, then you kind of shot up to this next level. So how did that feel for you, going from like...
It was fucking amazing.
But like, were you like shocked for a minute? You're like, yes. What just happened?
Oh my God, yeah, for sure. We went out and had a wild night. Yeah, it was like me and my buddies. It was great. But, I'm the luckiest guy on the planet.
Right.
Never in my wildest dreams did I think this would happen. And I try not to take it for granted, and I tried to enjoy every minute of it. I learned a lot from my dad, who was an upholsterer. Like, you had to rip in your car seat, and it was just appreciate every moment, enjoy your life. And it's not about how much you have, but how much you have opens doors and creates opportunities.
Absolutely. And you can take care of people around you. And how do you give back in that process is the most important thing.
For sure.
So for a lot of this younger generation, sometimes I feel like I'm a older millennial, but people kind of under me, they're just so fixated on the dollar versus the actual purpose and mission. So what would be like, when you look at these younger kids, like, what do you think? Like, what advice would you give them?
It's social media, right? So that whether, I've got a 15, 18, and 21-year-old, and they see that's the same feed. And it's funny, especially my 15-year-old, like, he's gone through the whole process where, when drop shipping on TikTok was hot,
right.
He wanted to do a drop shipping company, or when getting tennis shoe drops, sneaker drops, right? He wanted to do sneaker drops and just into the next thing. And so, you've got to love your product. You've got to, it can't just, it's okay to chase dollars if you're trying to, move from where you were. I mean, it was about the money. When I was sleeping on the floor, eating junk all the time, wow. Just like, get me out of here.
Yeah.
It didn't matter. But to really, really prosper and grow, it's got to be something you love.
Right.
Because if you find yourself not wanting to go to work, or if you find yourself thinking that this is work, it's going to be hard to be successful, because you got to remember there's somebody competing with you, and there might be 10, 15, 20, 100 different companies. And there's somebody that, like, if they think you're slacking, they're going to compete with you. And so you've got to really, like you asked me, like, how many, what am I doing? Am I working? I love doing this.
Right.
I think what sets me apart is I love to learn. I'm curious, but I'm also competitive. I see business as a sport, and I want to win.
And what values, because your children have such a successful father, what values do you instill in them? Because they could also say, hey man, I'm going to coast. And you're like,
right. No, they know they can't coast.
Okay. So,
I always tell them it's my money, not yours.
Okay. I'm like, you better work for it.
I want them to find their own way.
Okay.
I want them to be themselves. If they want to work with me, great, but I want them to try to, figure out who they are. And I try to tell them, just be curious, and you don't have to know who you are. When you're 15, 18,
right.
21, everything's going to change, and the world's going to change. And, we don't live in the world we were born into. It just, like, especially now with AI, it's just changing so fast. And so get out there, be curious, and learn, and find your own path.
And for 15 years of doing Shark Tank, right? That was such an experience.
Yeah.
What did you love about it, and what did you absolutely hate about it?
So what I loved about it was when we shot the show, it was fun to compete with the other sharks and kick their ass. It was fun to send the message to America that the American dream was alive and well, that, we saw all kinds of people that came on there and did really well. What I hated about it was after you close the deal and you misread the person, it's a grind, and it's a slog. I mean, it's just like, yeah, just trying to help somebody, and you get to that point you realize they just can't be helped, or they liked being on TV, they didn't like working, and we're allowed to do due diligence, so if they lie or misrepresent, then we don't have to close the deal. But it's still it's a grind.
And did you form like really close relationships with some of the other sharks on the show?
No, I'm grateful with all of them. We all get along.
Because I was wondering, it's like when you're doing a show like that and everybody's really successful in their own right, there can sometimes be a lot of egos in the room as well, right? And sometimes you love each other, and sometimes you're like, man, I can't stand that person.
Well, there's times like when we go at each other on the show where it's just like, leave me alone, right? Or like, I'm just going to kick their ass. But when you're shooting 10 hours a day, you get to know somebody. And when you know you got to get through the day, it's just not worth fighting. Like when the show was younger, when we first get it started, there were a lot more battles and things were a lot more personal. But now we're just family.
And also, do you think, because like everybody knows Mark Cuban, right? It's like you're like a household name. Do you think just if you were just a billionaire, but you had the Dallas Mavericks and all that, but if you hadn't gone on Shark Tank, would you feel that you would still be a household name like that?
No
right.
Chance.
So
No
that's what kind of like shot you to it.
Yeah. I mean, and it's still weird to hear somebody say that about me.
You are.
Yeah. So, it's just bizarre to me that I went from being some kid in Pittsburgh to, sitting here and having this conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just never my wildest dreams.
And if you look back at certain key times in your career or in your life, was there ever a time that completely like brought you to your knees? Because there's sometimes people go through these things that completely break them for the next like.
That's a great question, right? Really is. There were times you always question yourself, right? I think anybody who says they don't have imposter syndrome at some level is a narcissist or just out of their mind. And so, there's times for me where it was like, do I deserve to be here? I've had people steal from me, and I thought, okay, is this my business going to have to close? And I just didn't have a choice. Damon John on Shark Tank calls it the power of broke. When your back's against the wall and it's, back to sleeping on the floor with 5 roommates and eating mustard and ketchup sandwich and bar food, or figuring it out. If you're fortunate enough, you can figure it out.
Right. I think those are the moments that shape you the most.
Yeah, for sure.
Those are the moments that make you really ask and question yourself inside, how I'm going to show up the next day and who do I want to be?
Yeah, and it also makes you appreciate it more, because it's never an easy ride for an entrepreneur, as you know. It's never a straight line. Right. It's like that old picture of the duck calm on the top and the feet going nuts underneath. Yeah. That's the way it always is, and it always will be. And like, it's just always like business in particular, life, but business in particular is always changing, and you got to figure it out, and you've got to stay connected to figure things out. And you got to be appreciative of it too, because if you don't appreciate not just yourself, but the people around you that are helping, then it makes it harder to be successful.
I think it's really important to never forget, where you came from and the people that were there for you when you had nothing.
Oh, for sure. My high school buddies are still my best friends.
Yeah.
My roommates from when I came down there, most of them are still good friends. You've got to just stay grounded. You can't let it get you. You can't think what somebody says about you is you, for better or worse.
Yeah. And when you went from being a millionaire to a billionaire, I know you live a really modest life, actually, and you're really like down to earth.
Oh, when you having to play, you can't say, but I obviously don't like try to go big. Yeah.
But what changed for you lifestyle wise? Was there like a massive jump? Were there some things you're like, well, I'm going to say you bought a plane.
I bought a plane, and I was able to do crazy stuff like the house I still live in. It's been 25 years. I bought sight unseen.
Wow.
Yeah, my friend came to me and said this guy had just lost all this money in the stock market, and he spent 3 years building at $25 million building this house, and it's about to go to auction. You can buy it for $12 million. And he sent me some pictures. I'm like, okay, go for it. That's when I first made money. I was
let's go.
Yeah, why not, right? Yeah, because it was when you go through that, right? I mean, I was well off before. I wasn't starving when it hit. But at that level, it's hard to understand just how much that is. But the way I was raised, I never wanted to spend or lose any of it. So I had to force myself, that sounds crazy, to buy the house and buy the plane. But I'm just like, don't be an idiot, Mark. See, enjoy the moment.
Yourself. Exactly. You worked hard for this.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the media landscape as well, because you brought up social media and your kids. Where do you think the future of media is going?
Ooh, another good question. I don't know for sure, but I know AI is going to change it.
Yeah.
everything is becoming synthesized, avatars. You don't know what's real and what's not real, other than human connection. And so trying to find ways to connect to people, but also understanding the technology to know how to flood the zone and do volume things. Because there's times when you don't care if it's a real person. And trying, from a media perspective, understanding when someone wants to see somebody who's real and human versus somebody who's fine. That's an avatar. I don't care. I just don't want to read. I want to listen. Like, there's products that'll turn transcripts into podcasts, or they'll turn like training manuals or PDFs into a podcast. I don't know if you play with like Notebook LM.
Yeah, of course.
Oh my God, it's insane, right?
Amazing,
right? And so, and they sound human, but it's just tech. And so understanding when and how to use them and when to consume them is going to be really important. We're worried about being tricked, and that's important, but I think it's more important to know how to consume it and how to use it. Like I was telling my kids, I'm like, you got to play with this stuff because it's just getting started. And if I were 16 years old and getting started and trying to make money, I'd be learning everything I could about AI and going to businesses and saying, okay, I'll show you how to use it. You pay me, and learning and implementing it.
What do you think? I know you say, I heard you, I think it was another place or another podcast that you talked about there's nothing that beats grit, having the grit to show up and like put hard work into it. Now, with AI making things so much easier for this younger generation, like I said, I'm an older millennial, so we're so old school. We used to still read a lot. We still have to really think on our feet because we just didn't have technology the way this generation does. Do you think it's forming some of them to be lazier and not really think outside the box?
So it can make people lazier, but so did PCs when they first came out. So did, like, before there were spreadsheets, people used to use a 10-key adding machine and, yellow pads. So, it always makes us a little bit lazier, but it's also important to know how to use them, because if everybody has access to the same stuff, then either you got to figure out a way to roll it up into something bigger, and AI is one more tool in that respect. It's just the most powerful tool we've ever seen.
And what do we think about this generation almost being, I wouldn't say soft is the right word, but they don't have the same sort of grind in them. Yeah, they're just different, right?
They're so caught up in social media and just, swipe. And that's okay. I mean, you get on there a lot. I get on there a lot because, it's doom scrolling is for everybody.
Yeah, of course.
Right. But I think Gen Z and whatever they call the younger generation underneath that is very entrepreneurial, because they've been hit in the face with all these, hustle porn and how to make money and, continuously. Every minute of every day, it's in their feed. And by the way, the best way to tell, what your kids are into is just look at their Instagram and TikTok feeds. They'll tell you
everything about them. Yeah. And what they're consuming, and then be like, what age actually did you give your kids access to social media? 13, all of them. Yeah. And did you think that was a right? Obviously you did it, so you thought it was a right, but do you wish you'd waited a little bit longer? Or
there's no chance.
Okay.
Right. Because I kept on saying, look, I'm in the tech industry. I'm a public figure. You can't get on Snapchat earlier because I'd get in trouble.
Right. Yeah. But you're like, maybe Facebook or Instagram, go for it.
Yeah. Even Instagram. They didn't care about Facebook.
I also read somewhere that basically there's, some talks about you're not a really big fan of like TikTok, and there's something going on with Skylight.
Yeah. So, Skylight, there's a platform called Blue Sky.
Okay. And
it's a moderated platform, a lot like X, Twitter, but it's moderated. But it doesn't really have a lot of TikTok-like features. So I supported one company called Skylight that's going on there and allowing the 35 million users or whatever of Blue Sky to have TikTok-like features. And it's really cool.
Yeah.
And then I'm working with another company that is looking to create a social media app, and we're still in stealth mode. But the idea is that it's AI native. Okay. Because right now, like with TikTok and even Skylight, you can use AI to create content, but then you have to upload it, as opposed to making, text to video integrated into the social media apps.
And in terms of this whole thing, like if we look back, some social media platforms have like previously admitted now to suppressing information and, impeaching on people's like freedom of speech.
We're trying to influence them.
Yeah. How do you think platforms or founders can do a better job?
I mean, it's a private company. they get to do whatever they want.
Yeah.
That's free speech. That's part of it. You don't have to use the platform, and there's plenty of people that'll tell you. And I think there's things that they could do that would be better. Like I remember talking to TikTok and saying, why don't for kids under 16, why don't you make an HTML feed of the videos they looked at, so parents can go back and see, wait, they looked at it. They're like, no, people could reverse engineer and see our algorithm. I'm like, well, that tells you where their head's at, and that's fine. But and I think Facebook, Meta with Instagram and WhatsApp do the same thing,
right?
And so they all could do better, but we know they're not going to.
Right.
And if you know they're not going to, then you just have to make decisions and do your best. But, every generation has got stuff. It's just the stuff now for our kids today is just nonstop.
Right. I just thought it was odd that, with everything Instagram did, and it came out and admitted it, and then Mark all of a sudden showed up, in DC and stuff for the inauguration. I was like, what is going on here? So I just think some of these people come across as sellouts then.
Yeah. I mean, it's about the money, and I think, now you're seeing Zuckerberg and Bezos and Microsoft and, Google all, kissing ass in the White House because there's so much at stake. AI is a multi-trillion-dollar business and they all want to win. It could be a zero-sum game. We don't know. There might just be one winner.
Right.
And the last thing you want is to lose these trillions of dollars because you pissed off the president.
Right.
So they're going there to kiss the ring and give him money to try to minimize that possibility.
And what do we think about the whole thing with AI safety and, kind of what's coming up?
It's a great question. Yeah. By the time a product is released, you can't do anything to try to make a product safer before it's released.
Right.
You've got to deal with the problems that occur after a product is released. And because you can't add guardrails after the fact, but on the flip side, you don't want to try to slow it down because you can't slow it down globally.
Right.
No matter what we say or do here, China doesn't give a shit. They're going to do what they do because they want to win. India the same way. And so if we try to slow things down here, that doesn't protect anybody. It just makes it more difficult.
People aren't talking about this enough, but I truly want to optimize your health. We need to be paying attention to EMFs. We are constantly plugged in, surrounded by wireless signals, radiation, frequencies that our bodies have never, ever been able to handle at this level. Research has shown that EMFs can disrupt sleep, impact cellular function, and contribute to long-term health issues. Yet we're rarely talking about this or how to protect ourselves from this. This is why I was so excited when I first discovered Lila Quantum Tech. I met them 2 years ago at a biohacking conference in Austin and was absolutely blown away by the founder, Philip Mon. Hearing him on stage and learning about quantum energy technology completely shifted my perspective. I knew I had to try it for myself. And now, 2 years later, I'm so excited to have them partner with me on my podcast. One of my absolute favorite products, the Heal 360 capsule, which I wear on my quantum necklace every day. This isn't just any pendant. It's scientifically designed and quantumly charged to support your body's natural ability to heal, energize, and protect itself from harmful influences. People using it have reported more energy, mental clarity, better stress resilience, and relaxation, deeper sleep, and faster recovery. And that is also the feedback I got from our supper club when I gifted it to all our guests. Lila Quantum Tech is leading the way in quantum frequency healing with products designed to neutralize EMFs, enhance cellular function, and help your body operate at its best. I personally felt the difference since wearing Heal 360 capsule, and I think you'll love it too. Check it out at lilaq.com and use code Biohack-it for a discount. That is LEELAQ.com and use code Biohack-it. Happy healing. And looking at from a technological aspect or just where America's kind of headed, and you brought up China and obviously India, where do you think over the next 20 years America's going to be placed? Because we have come across as always trying to peg ourselves as this massive superpower.
Right.
So,
I mean, we can be. I'm a true believer in American exceptionalism, but kind of the balance of trade for brains, it used to always go in our direction. Now, not so much. We're scaring away our smartest people, and the people who aren't here, who used to want to come here, we're scaring them away from coming here, and that's not good.
And you brought up tariffs earlier, so I just wanted to kind of go there because it's such a hot topic right now. So what is your take on the tariffs?
I'm not anti-tariff, but it's like any other tool or financial instrument. You've got to use it the right way. Right. So if we're trying to protect farmers, if we're trying to protect our steel industry, shipbuilding even, right, fine. put in tariffs. But if you're just trying to put in across the board tariffs, that's just inflationary. And the whole concept of, wow, these tariffs are going to bring back manufacturing. I mean, I'm an investor in a company called Guardian Bikes, and we move almost all the manufacturing. Actually, we still import some parts to Indiana from China. And this was 4 years ago, because if you can make it here, it's better, right? Of course. And if you can get the technology to work, you can make it here. And with Cost Plus Drugs, we have manufacturing in Dallas, Texas. And our manufacturing of medications is probably the most advanced in the country. Now, we're not big enough to do all medications here, but we'll get there over the next 5 years. So, the trade, what's frustrating right now with the tariffs is the perception that if you just implement tariffs, then manufacturing is going to come back.
But that's a long time.
It takes a long
time, yeah.
And I think the real point they're missing, the great initiator of manufacturing isn't tariffs, it's intellectual property. Knowing how to use and implement robots, knowing how to use AI to reduce your costs. And the old days of the Laverne and Shirley thing where they're like on the factory line, maybe that's even before your time. But yeah, those days are gone. And so I'd rather see them encourage. It's just like what they did with the CHIPS Act, getting TMSC. They said, okay, we'll give you some money because this is strategic. This is, those chips are the most important product that in the country, because without those chips, we can't do anything from a technological perspective. And so I'd rather see the carrot than the stick.
Right.
Because I think that gets things done faster. But we are where we are, and, we just don't know. We'll see.
Do you see countries like China and all backing down? Because today, I think I was reading a headline here coming in, China seems to be doubling down almost.
Yeah, it'd be okay. So, look at it this way. If I'm loaning you a ton of money and I'm giving you, in this case, trillions of dollars, I'm thinking to myself, you're dependent on me. And then you have our perspective, which is we're the biggest market. If you want access to our market, and so we're playing chicken. They're saying, look, we'll just stop loaning you money, America, and you've got this big deficit. And if we don't loan you trillions of dollars,
you're gonna have to figure it out.
You're not gonna have the cash to pay your bills. You're gonna have to print more money, and that's gonna create even more inflation. And so it's a game of chicken. And I don't know what China's going to do. And there's a lot of things they could do to screw us up. Like, they already said that they're limiting natural resources, minerals and materials and stuff. And that keeps us from making products, and they're a big market for certain industries. So it's a game of chicken. But here's what I think is the underlying problem. The balance of trade, like having a trade deficit, just means we're bigger. We're bigger consumers than they are, right? And that's not a bad thing. That means we've earned the right to buy stuff. And, our balance of trade for services, particularly technological services, we have a trade surplus. Everybody buys tech services from us. If China or other countries were to put tariffs on our tech services, it'd be a problem. Yeah. It'd be a real problem. If they stopped lending us money, it'd be a problem. They've already stopped buying agricultural, not stopped, but, changed their agricultural buying habits. If we were strategic in how we did them and said steel, aluminum, farming, this, we're going to protect those industries. Right. But we're also going to invest in them so that we can accelerate building manufacturing here. Great. Tariffs are a beautiful word then. But when you just say you want the balance of trade, that makes no sense. And, and it doesn't accelerate bringing manufacturing here. So I think conceptually their tariffs could be valid and valuable. But they have to be strategic. They can't be punitive. And the other thing is, I think part of the reason they focus on balance of trade is because they're dogmatic about it. Like here we are talking about data for our health. You can't be dogmatic. You can't, once you realize that the data tells you you're wrong, you've got to pivot. Yeah, you got to pivot. And if you're dogmatic about it, you could be dead. It's like what happened with Steve Jobs. He had cancer and he decided to go fully holistic and not listen to doctors saying it's okay to go holistic, but you got to do the other stuff too. And he regretted it. And so you got to pay attention to the data. And I don't think we are, as the Trump administration is doing that right now.
If just listening to you and hearing everything you're saying, I really think the U.S., the first step should have been bringing in industry and setting them up here before implementing all these aggressive tariffs.
Yes. Be ready to win. That would have given us leverage.
Right. And that makes total sense to me. But looking at it, how long do you think, with the state of America where we are today, would it take to build those different types of industries?
Well, that's what the industry is.
Okay.
Right. For bikes was one thing. For drugs, it took us 3 years to build a factory. It's all robotics-driven manufacturing in Dallas, Texas. Like I said, one of, if not the most advanced manufacturers of medications. And it took us 3 years. And we're working on expanding it as fast as we can. If we get a little bit of luck, we have a chance to be the biggest domestic manufacturer in 5 years, because I'll just keep on investing. But we didn't take that approach, and you hit the nail on the head where we should have done it first and said, see what we did here? We can do this for every industry. And we started doing that with the CHIPS Act with TSMC. If we had done it with others, like in T-shirts, it could be making T-shirts. If we found a way to make T-shirts faster, cheaper, better, and just say, look, we're just going to replicate this. We want better tariffs, or you're going to lose all that business. That would have been the right way to do it. Then you can say, okay, look, now we know how to make our T-shirts, and our tennis shoes, sneakers for 50% of what we were making them before. And more importantly, less than we were buying them for in China. Once we're able to do that, because we used American exceptionalism, we took the AI, we took the robotics, we pulled it all together and integrated it and figured out the economics. Then it all makes perfect sense. Yeah. Then we can put tariffs on to protect them if we want, or just compete and not even need tariffs. But we can say, okay, we're going to stop you selling T-shirts because we can make them cheaper, better, faster. Right. We don't need you, but if you want to sell here, just open the door for us to sell cars or whatever.
Right.
Whatever it may be. And we just didn't do it that way.
I think there was a couple of I think it was Porsche and another German car company that said they're planning to start manufacturing here if this continues, because they're we're going to lose so much money.
Right. They're going to stop.
Yeah. So I think it was Porsche, and I have to remember what other company.
And there's almost Stellaris that let off 900 people.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, look, I think he's trying to get to the right place, but he's not that well versed. You can't be dogmatic. He's just not somebody, he's not a curious person. And I don't want to try to rip on him. I've said enough stuff about him. It's not so much about him as it is just understanding where leverage points are. If we were able to demonstrate and support manufacturing, like I just said, and then went and negotiated tariffs, we'd have a whole lot more leverage.
You posted something really interesting last night. It was a reel that somebody had created about the guy who wrote Trump's tariff policy.
Yeah, Peter Navarro.
Yeah, can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, basically, this backstory is Jared Kushner, Donald Trump's son-in-law, introduced Donald Trump to a guy named Peter Navarro, who I liked. I'll say good things about Peter from the perspective that during Trump 1, when the pandemic hit, he and I worked together on a mask manufacturer, which was the only major mask manufacturer in the United States, called Premier. And so he got a hold of me, and because it was in Fort Worth, so I started working with him and helping them. And so, yeah, it was great. But as it turns out, Jared Kushner read a book that
found on Amazon.
Yeah, right. And it was Kill China, or How China Killed Us. Yeah, I forget the name of it. And it turns out that Peter Navarro invented sources for the book, almost like Donald Trump did when he invented John Miller, right, to do PR. And that all just came out. And I feel bad for Peter, but it makes you question just the whole underpinning. But Donald Trump has been dogmatic about trade for 30 plus years. That predated Peter Navarro. Yeah. And so it's not just that, again, I just don't believe you can be principled, but you can't be dogmatic in business or government.
Is there any policies, I obviously know your stance, but is there any policies you think they're getting right? Is there anything you look at and you're yeah, slam dunk, you guys figured it out over there?
Look, what they did with the border, I think was far better. Even when I campaigned for Harris, I was like, got to fix the border. Yeah. It was getting better under Biden, but it wasn't as good, and it was a response rather. So I think, the border, they've done a great job. I like the selling the citizenship for $5 million.
Oh yeah, that's
easy money, right? I think particularly for corporations, it could be a great alternative to H-1B visas. Just tell a company you can buy X number of them instead of a lottery.
Yeah.
Brilliant, right? And so I think he's done that well. I think conceptually, if you're deporting criminals, that's good. But if you're just walking up to people with masks and pulling them off the street, that's not good.
But do you think he's doing that to scare people because so many people came across the border?
Yeah, but you can't do that. There's a lot of ways to scare people. Just walking up to somebody with a mask on, that's not
a way to do it.
Yeah, that's not the way to do it. I mean, those are the things that stand out the most.
And if you had to go back, or maybe you still hold the same stance, I know you obviously campaigned for Harris, would you still choose that? Or would you have gone, maybe you're like, hey, they kind of got these things right, I might have voted this way?
No, because I'm a big believer character is destiny.
Okay.
And so I like Kamala. I think she's smarter than people give her credit to, but she just wasn't a good salespeople and she didn't have good people around her. Could there have been a better candidate? Yes. But obviously, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but now he's our president. And so I want to see what's best for the country.
Right.
And so I'll help them with healthcare. I'll help them with anything they ask me to do, like I did the first time. But if there was another Republican candidate, like I voted for Nikki Haley in the Republican primaries in Texas.
Right.
I'm not saying she was a perfect candidate either. I've gotten to know Vivek, not a perfect candidate. No, but there's no perfect candidates.
Right.
I just thought their pluses and minuses were stronger than Donald Trump's.
And do you see yourself ever going into running for office?
No.
No?
Chance.
I think you'd be great at it.
Yeah. No. If you got to know me, pomp and circumstances. And, like I said, I want to lay in bed and read my email.
Yeah.
You don't want to go work out. Yeah.
You don't want to be beholden to other people or,
Yeah, and their schedule, right?
Yeah.
I work really, really hard to live on my schedule.
Right.
To me, that was the ultimate freedom. People work to my time. Like they're the ones that have to get dressed up. I don't have to be the one to get dressed up. They'll, oh, sure, whatever time works for you, Mark,
right.
as opposed to, hey, whatever time works for you.
Exactly.
And so I that doesn't fit me. And plus, I think, I have a chance to really change healthcare. And that's important. Nobody looks at healthcare in this country and says, oh, we got it right.
So on that opinion of healthcare, I want to know what you think of our, HHS pick. Bobby Kennedy and him coming in with the team, because
I like the Maha stuff.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I like the Maha stuff. I don't like his position on vaccines. I don't like the fact that he got rid of people from the FDA. That he got rid of the guy, Peter Marks, I think his name was, the guy who was in charge of the vaccine and other programs. I don't like the fact that they're not investing. Of the top 130 drugs approved by the FDA, like 119 of them were started with NIH research. And even like GLP-1s came from the Gila monster or whatever, and taking the venom because one person had an idea that the way they lived their lives as little, reptiles, maybe could turn into a product. Right. And it took 20 some years, but now it's the most popular drug and it can literally change people's lives because the NIH invested in something that seemed crazy. If it was now, oh my God, we're investing in the eating and sleeping habits and the venom of this reptile.
Right.
People, Elon would have that front and center saying this is a waste of money, and so you just never know where breakthroughs are going to come from. And I don't like the idea that he's cut all that. I think we need to cut spending. Don't get me wrong, but it's got to be strategic. Right now, we're too ready, fire, aim.
Right. And my thing was, my thing on the vaccines was I just like to do more research and have transparency to give people options. I think people should be allowed to choose whatever they want to choose that works for their family and their health. But I like the one point that was like, let's bring around more research around these topics.
I'm not the expert. We don't, my attitude is it's a contagious disease.
Yes.
If it's not contagious, it's a family choice.
Right.
Do what you want to do. Shingles vaccine, up to you.
Flu shot,
up to you. Yeah, up to you. If it's contagious, and you could kill somebody else by not getting it, we have to have a really important conversation to see. Now, you can argue how contagious and how deadly, but you can't preclude somebody who has COVID from being around somebody who's a grandma or somebody who's had pre-existing conditions. They're like 7% of the population has had cancer. You can't. And so somebody decides they're in best interest not to take the COVID vaccine, when it was rampant and, somebody that you gave the tube. So to me, I'm pro saving lives when something's contagious. So I'm willing to step on people's liberties a little bit there.
Okay.
But if it's not contagious, it's up to you.
Yeah. So you're saying basically it's down to the individual choice as long as it's not contagious.
Right. As long as what your choices don't kill other people,
right,
do whatever the hell you want.
And what if we find out there's more research, like, because how like Pfizer had basically banned restricted information to be shared for 75 years, there was something like that. What if we get access to information that shows that it was questionable to begin with?
Then you deal with those issues. Like when I had to make decisions for the Mavs when all this was going down, I didn't just look at information from the CDC. Mm-hmm. Like I looked at stuff from Qatar, which had literally control of every health record of every citizen of the country and every immigrant that come into the country. And so I worked off of their data. I worked off of Israel's data. I worked off of other countries' data. So it wasn't just about, believing, because I wanted to question my whole card, right? To
Absolutely.
see if, my fundamental beliefs were true. And nobody contradicted any of the things that were happening here. And when every country in the world is saying, okay, you can always say there's a need for more research. You can always say, okay, these big pharma companies, tried to pull a fast one to make money, but they also have families and employees,
right.
And so I'm less concerned about that because that's easiest to detect.
Right. I'm interested to see kind of the research that comes out and kind of what kind of comes to light, and then they develop further stuff from that standpoint.
Well, yeah, I mean, look,
mRNA
vaccines are going to be here forever.
Yes, and the usage of it will vary depending on what comes out in this.
Right, and they'll keep on, until the NIH started cutting everything, there was going to be a lot more research so we can learn to be smarter.
If you're spending hundreds on skincare but ignoring one of the most powerful anti-aging tools out there, you are missing out, my biohackers. I'm talking about red light therapy and Bond Charge's red light face mask. It has completely changed the game for me. Red light therapy isn't just another hype. It penetrates deep into the skin, boosting collagen, reducing inflammation, and easing signs of aging. And the best part, it's cordless, it's lightweight, and totally painless. So I can wear it while I'm getting work done, watching TV, or even making a quick smoothie for myself or taking my dogs for a walk. I've tried a lot of skincare treatments, and let's be honest, some of them are messy, others are time-consuming, or just plain uncomfortable. But this mask makes it so easy, just 10 minutes a day, and I've noticed my skin is brighter, clearer, and even more even-toned. No downtime, no hassle, and because Bond Charge products are HSA, FSA eligible, you can use your health-saving funds to invest in your skin. Trust me, you need this in your skincare routine ASAP. Right now, my listeners get 15% off when you order from bondcharge.com. Just use my exclusive code Biohack-it at checkout. That's bondcharge.com, plus you'll get free shipping and a 12-month warranty. Again, that's Biohack-it. Go grab yours now. Your skin will thank you later. I also read somewhere, and you tell me if this is true, that you have some beef with Elon.
Oh, I don't have a beef with Eli.
What's your take on him and being so involved?
He likes to talk with me, and I like to fuck with him. That's it. I think the concept of Doge is really smart.
Yes.
Right? We spend too much. There's too many people. There's too many employees in government. Too many buildings, too many office leases, etc.
Yeah.
But the question is, when you cut that much, you've got to ask yourself, what are the second or and third order impacts? If you just cut to cut, it's not like you're running Twitter or, Cost Plus Drugs or any other company. This is the country. And
yes.
Conceptually, I love it. I mean, I've said forever and a day that government can be, 30% smaller. But you got to do it strategically again. When there are a lot of cities and towns and states that are really dependent on government grants, government office buildings, government employment. And, there's what was I reading? That the Treasury has an office in Parkersburg, West Virginia of 2,000 people in a town of 29,000. You cut 125, 250, 1,000 of those 2,000 people, and that's cities struggling. NIH cut grants to the University of Iowa and other schools too, to the tune of $79 million. That's a big hit to the state of Iowa and Iowa City. And so, and there's examples of those over and over and over. So if you would have said, okay, here's everybody that's on our shit list. This is going to be gone. So we're going to give you 12 months to figure out or to tell us why. We're not hiring consultants to, take 2 years to analyze it, but we're telling you this is probably going to be cut unless you give us a good reason. And if you don't, be prepared and find places for your people to work. And, the communities realize your tax receipts are going to be lower. States realize maybe you can't balance your budget the way you used to. So you need to make accommodations. And it still might be bad for the overall economy, but at least you're giving everybody a chance. Just, firing everybody on a whim, closing offices on a whim, shuttering buildings on a whim, cutting grants and contracts on a whim. The downstream effects are going to be, because everything cascades at that point, because it's all happening at once.
It seems like this, since they've all taken office, everything has just been abrasive. Like everything is just coming like a shotgun, basically. What sort of duration would you have advised? You did it with the tariffs. You said, this is what I would have done. What sort of duration would you have advised for them to go into Doge? Like, what's the timeline?
You just look at the numbers,
okay,
right? You just analyze it. And so you say, okay, in Parkersburg, West Virginia, there are 2,400 federal employees.
Right.
In a town, and let's just say that the area in Parkersburg is 35,000 instead of 29. Okay, let's get a hold of the mayor. Let's just send him an email and say, here's what's coming. What do you suggest? And they'll say, well, no, don't cut. And here's the reasons. And you'll say, no, we have to cut. And, how do you recommend that we do it? And if they say, well, at least, just do it, a third, or every quarter, do 1/4. So over the course of a year, we can try to integrate the people who are fired every quarter. Okay. At least you give them a chance to respond. But, when you take the approach that you cut everything and then the 10% you shouldn't have fired, you bring back, that works when it's your company and you can tell the CEO or you are the CEO and you can say, okay, we'll figure it out. But if it's Parkersburg, West Virginia, if it's Iowa City, if it's Bloomington, Indiana, if it's any number of smaller towns that are dependent on this, that's not going to work.
And how do you feel about Elon's overall involvement, so heavily being involved in U.S. politics all of a sudden and being in office, being front and center?
He paid for it. I mean, look, I don't care.
Yeah.
He's welcome. He's a citizen like everybody else. And so he can contribute in any which way he wants.
Right.
I don't give money to politicians because I want them to listen to me because they either agree or disagree with what I have to say. He has to buy their interest. So we're different in that way.
I was going to say, I feel like a lot of the other billionaires who obviously were in D.C. for the inauguration are buying their way into essentially, like you said earlier, kissing the ring. Do you think that's going to shape their business and the decisions they make and they won't necessarily operate from integrity because they're just trying to please someone else?
I mean, no one thinks that they're a crook. Everybody thinks in their heart they're a good person. Even the robber barons and so I think they're going in there and I'm guessing that they're thinking, well, I need to win AI. And whatever it takes for me to do that, that gives me leverage. Like Elon wants to make as much money as he can to pay for a rocket ship to Mars. He wants to influence government so he can get government funding from NASA and wherever to put us on Mars. Okay, that's a lofty goal. I can respect that goal. And Elon goes, what I do respect about Elon is he always goes all in with his own money. What I don't respect is hypocritical because he's not saying, okay, SpaceX, I'm going to just do it at cost because our debt is so enormous, or Starlink, I'm going to give it to you at cost. He's taking his margins and then some. So, I think whoever it is, you just have to, I was listening to a podcast and they said that trust was basically a formula of transparency divided by self-interest. So the more transparent you are and the less self-interest, the more you're going to be trusted. I think when people look at a lot of the oligarch billionaires, right, they don't trust them because all they see is self-interest without any transparency. And that's why we, chose our path on cost plus drugs, because we want a complete transparency and you see my margins. So, it's not complete self-interest. Right. So you can trust us.
Do you think there's anybody you're so transparent, you're being straight up, this is what I do, this is why I'm doing it, this is my purpose, my passion. Do you think there are any of these other essentially billionaires in the playing in the ring right now that are trying to be that transparent?
No. Okay. But, I don't want to say we all, I don't want to speak for them, but everybody's got their mission.
Yeah.
And I don't think they've been transparent on what that mission is. I take it, Elon has. He wants to go to Mars.
Yeah.
He wants to go to Mars. Everybody else, they're just running their public companies, trying to maximize shareholder value.
Right. And so the transparency isn't there.
Yeah.
And do you think when they originally obviously started their companies and they started scaling, there was still the passion and the in servitude, right? Everybody goes into business in servitude to something bigger than themselves. But how do you think people can, when they hit it that big, can go back to that why and be like, I need to go back to being in service? Kind of like what you did, right?
Yeah,
like
everybody's different though. Like I'm not chasing my next dollar. It's not like I'm not trying to say, okay, how big can my net worth be? I got enough money.
Right.
That doesn't drive me anymore. I like to fuck things up, right? I mean, that to me gives me a lot more satisfaction than being worth, $100 billion.
Yeah. You're not looking for the next, jump to the next thing.
No, not at all.
What do you think is going to happen with the future of Tesla?
I have no idea. I have a Tesla.
Yeah.
I also have a Kia EV6.
Amazing.
I drive my Kia more than I drive my Tesla.
And why is that?
Because Tesla, you always have to be thinking about the technology in a Tesla. Like, you have to hit buttons and, to the turn. Like, I'm still comfortable with hitting just hitting a knob or doing whatever, turning a knob. And then I was too distracted with the Tesla. There's always something to geek out on. Yeah. So I was worried about that.
What do you think is considered absolutely stupid spending for somebody even as wealthy as you?
Oh my God, there's just so much shit.
You look at it and you're like, that's so freaking stupid. I'm not spending on that.
Yeah, I mean, like furniture, like fancy furniture, comfortable furniture. Yeah, but I'm not, because then my wife will kill me.
I should have asked what you think is stupid for her to be spending.
No, I mean, I don't, I have the plane and everything. And, I was looking at upgrading my plane, and then they gave me.
What do you currently have right now? Tell me.
I have a Bombardier 6000, I think is the number, and a G550. And so because the older planes they have to go into maintenance more, and they're down, and so here first world problems, right? Yeah. And then some. And so they were like, well, it may be cheaper to get a new plane. And so they sent me one, this link to one coming out today, or that I got it today. It was $84 million. I'm like, that's stupid spending.
Okay.
Yeah.
You're like, that is not something.
Yeah, I still have that old school mentality where I'm not, because it's funny, as I get older now, it's just like, I can't take it with me. So I'm trying to find more ways to spend money. And it's just like, no, that's still stupid.
Yeah. You're like, I don't want to spend on that.
No,
And so you love your Apple Watch. You're not into watches either.
No, not at all. I got a collection of things that people.
Yeah, because Kevin really is from the show. He's a big watch guy, right? He's at Watches of Switzerland right now.
Yeah, but I get another really nice watch. I paid off somebody's marker in Vegas 20 years ago that turned into be a valuable watch. And so I've got some nice watches. But, the reason I'm not into watches is when I sold my first company, my dad, when I graduated from college, saved up his money and got me a really nice watch. And I wore that. And then when I sold my first company, Micro Solutions, I stopped wearing a watch. I'm like, I never want to be on someone else's time.
Wow.
They can be on my time, but I don't want to have to look to see if I'm on time or not. Watch free. Until I got the iWatch. And I call it, on Shark Tank, it's like Kevin showing off his watch. And I'm like, but I have the iWatch. You have all these fancy watches.
But I have the
iWatch. The watch.
But I'm so grateful. You were super punctual today. You showed up exactly on time.
Yeah.
So I appreciate
I iWatch.
Yeah, that's why. What do you think about the future of crypto when it comes to investment?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's here to stay, but crypto has really been a disappointment. The other cryptos, other than Bitcoin, and particularly Ethereum, and I still own a bunch, because the beauty of Ethereum was its smart contracts and its distributed nature. And I always expected that there would be a bunch of new applications that would make us go, whoa. Just like there was an Instagram moment and Snapchat moment for apps when the App Store came out. I really thought that there would be, but there hasn't been yet. Right. There's DeFi where you can borrow and send money, you can transport money and all this stuff. And it simplifies some things and makes it faster. There's USDC stable coins, which make things faster and better. But there hasn't been that breakthrough application, and that's been disappointing.
And so when it comes to, obviously you're not going to give investment advice, but if you had to tell your kids and they're like, hey, Dad, I'm going to come to you. I have some money to invest. Where should I start? What would you tell them? It's
so funny you asked that, because when the market cratered these last few days, my 15-year-old came to me. He goes, oh, my God, NVIDIA's at 94. Dad, lend me some money. And I'm like, look at the market cap. It's still a multi-trillion-dollar market cap. But it's like when you start, it's still that TikTok thing, right? Where people on TikTok are talking about it's cheap. I'm like, you can't do it emotionally. You've got to have a good, strong, valid premise to work on it from, so.
And when it comes to like looking at, people are so worried that there's a massive recession coming. We're going to experience what we did in 2008. What do you like?
I don't know. I think it's possible.
Okay. That bad? We really think it could get as bad as 2008?
I think it's possible. I'm not saying it's going to happen, not by long shot, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen with tariffs, and we don't know how much more Doge cuts are yet to come, because so many communities, like I said, are dependent on federal spending.
Right.
The growth in GDP a lot is influenced by federal spending. So if you yank that out, and now you have all these tariffs, and if all of a sudden we become isolationists to an extreme, then that is inflationary. And if that's inflationary and the spending is less, I mean, we could have stagflation. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong.
Right.
The difference, though, is, there were subprime mortgages back then and all these things that just ruined the economy. People were just, underwater their mortgages, turning in their keys. But in this particular case, it wasn't a financial mistake that like happened in 2008 or with Silicon Valley Bank, and other scenarios, or that caused Lehman Brothers to go out of business. Now it's the administration that's doing all of it. And so the bad news is they're doing it, right? For all the reasons we talked about earlier. The good news is maybe somebody can change their mind. And if somebody changes their mind, it shouldn't be nearly as bad.
And do you think it's going to take close to 4 years fully to correlate all of this stuff? Or do you think it start course correcting fast?
No, it'll course correct fairly quickly. Either, we may not be able to fix it very quickly, but we'll know if things, if we take a different path, we'll see it, right? And then we'll just deal with it accordingly.
If you know me, you know I avoid seed oils like the plague. They're everywhere, even in snacks labeled as clean, organic, or healthy. But the truth is, they wreak havoc on your metabolism, your hormones, and make you super inflamed. That's why I'm obsessed with Prima, one of the few products I completely trust. Prima was created to push back against processed artificial foods and bring us back to real, nutritional, ancestral ingredients that actually nourish your body. It's packed with 100% grass-fed beef tallow, grass-fed collagen, and grass-fed whey protein, delivering bioavailable nutrients for muscle recovery, joint health, and overall vitality without any of the junk. No seed oils, no refined sugars, no artificial additives, and the best part, it's one of the few products that is certified seed oil safe. I always keep Prima stocked in my bag. It's my go-to post-workout, between meetings, or anytime I need an easy, high-quality protein boost. Getting in at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight can be really tough, but it's essential for building and maintaining muscle as you age, or going through a fertility journey in your 40s and 30s like I am. And the flavor is delicious. Cacao, mocha, and salted caramel. You really can't go wrong. My favorite flavor is the salted caramel, plus the Prima bars are sweetened with organic raw honey and only contain organic whole food ingredients. So you're fueling your body with real clean nutrition. Because you're part of the Biohack-it community, you get 20% off. Just use code IMAN20 at eatprima.com. Ditch the seed oils, fuel your body right. You will feel the difference, I promise. Is there ever a decision you've taken from more of an emotional standpoint rather than just using your mind?
All the time.
Yeah. That is one that's gone really, really good, and one that's been like a really bad decision.
All basketball related. Whereas emotional is good is keeping Dirk Nowitzki forever and winning a championship here in Miami. Bad is letting Steve Nash go, and that was more, I thought it was based on data, but it probably wasn't.
And would you have maybe, looking back, still done the same thing to go through the same outcome, or would you have completely, or do you think it was so valuable, the lesson that you got, you're like,
No, I would have changed.
Oh, you would have changed, okay.
Nash, yeah, I would have changed, yeah.
You're like, this would have affected the outcome. I want to ask you one more thing that I submitted questions and somebody sent me a really good one for you. What's one piece of business advice that everyone believes but you think is absolute bullshit?
Follow your passions.
Okay.
Everybody's passionate.
Right.
I wanted to be a basketball or baseball player, and I was passionate about it. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
When you have a vertical leap like mine, it wasn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Don't follow your passions. Follow your effort. Where do you actually spend time? Mm-hmm. Because in order to get good at something, you have to spend a lot of time. And if you spend time at it, you get good. Nobody quits anything they're good at. So you might be passionate about one thing and then all of a sudden realize, but I'm better at this other thing.
Right.
Go do the things that you love to do. Because once you find something you love to do, if you can be great at it, that's when it rocks roll.
I'm somebody who really believes that because I love what I do. Every single day I wake up and I'm so grateful to be alive, and I'm just so grateful to get to work.
I'm always grateful I'm alive too.
I'm grateful to be alive. I'm grateful to do what I do and have the choice to do what I do. But I do think that what if somebody hasn't quite found their why? Where do they look? Where do they start?
No, it's brutal. Yeah, it's brutal. It really depends on your age, because the older you get, the more frustrating it can be. I have friends in that boat, and I was in that boat in my 20s where I was like, oh shit, is it ever going to work out?
Right.
But I knew that I was just going to keep on grinding.
Right.
Because, it comes down to this. If you're grinding, even if you're struggling, are you happy? If you're happy, you can figure
worth
it.
it.
If you're grinding and you get frustrated and you're hating your life because of it, it's going to be tough.
Yeah.
It's hard to rebound from anxiety like that and stress like that even if it's self-imposed.
And I think there's then a really big misalignment between your core belief systems and where you want to go and intellectually what you're thinking. So you can't really be successful because you're so unaligned with yourself.
Like, you talk to people about winning the lottery, and does money buy happiness?
Yeah.
If you were happy when you were broke, money's going to buy you a whole lot of happiness. Yeah. If you were miserable when you were broke, not because you were broke, just because of how you live your life, you're still going to be miserable when you're rich.
I am so grateful you just said that. So when I started my agency, we went through a really tough time financially. I lost a bunch of clients. I was like, I had 3 months of run rate left, but I was still really happy within myself. Yeah. And we figured it out. We got really creative and we bounced back stronger than ever. But I remember thinking to myself at that time, I said, would I still wake up and choose to do what I do and still be in service? And the answer was a hard yes.
Good. Yeah,
and that's why I'm still here doing what I do.
Yes, because shit's going to happen. Like my first company, we were in business a couple of years and we had $84,000 in the bank and this lady stole $82,000 of it.
What?
She took our account payables. Back then, that was her job, to answer the phone, process the mail and all that kind of shit. And she went to the bank. She took our accounts payable checks, used a whiteout to white out the payee, wrote in her name, went to the drive-through and took $82,000 of the $84,000 we had.
Did she end up in jail?
I haven't seen her. Her name's Renee Hardy, if you ever run into her. But I got a call from the bank. They're like, sir, this lady, da-da-da. I'm like, you didn't cash these checks, did you? Of course we did. We're a bank. And it was just like, but at that moment, right, I was mad. But it dawned on me very quickly. I've got to do something. And we've got to call those vendors and tell them, those checks aren't coming. Will you work with us?
Right.
And fortunately, they did. And the rest is history.
Has anybody ever, since obviously this is a huge learning that once it happens to you, you're like, I'm going to be so, kind of like keep my eye out on everything. But has something else like that really happened? There was a really shitty person you got into business with and they tried to take advantage of you?
I trusted. I invested without doing a lot of due diligence because I had done business with him and known him for a long time and gave him, $5 million, a lot of money. And he basically just took it and ran off.
And he's still around, or this person?
No, he fled to Saudi Arabia.
Oh my God.
Whichever one of those countries doesn't have extradition, yeah.
And he disappeared on the face of the earth.
Pretty much, yeah. We sued him and all that, and they went after him, and they were going to press charges, and they can't find him.
So out of the companies you are currently invested in, are you really excited about one and you think it might be the next unicorn, maybe, potentially?
I mean, cost plus.
Okay.
I think literally we can change healthcare. Right now it's pharmacy. We're working on getting into the medical side and changing the dynamics there. Mm-hmm. But I think with our technical expertise, we can increase manufacturing here in Dallas and really do a lot there and just scale. And with our pricing and margins, I think we can just keep on.
Make a difference.
Yeah, we've already made a difference in people's lives. It's insane. The emails we get almost every day. Yeah. I remember I guess it's been a month now. Guys, like I'm paying $903 a month for my cancer meds, where they wanted $903 a month for my cancer meds. And I made the decision that I couldn't put that on my wife's credit because when I'm gone, I don't want her saddled with all these bills. Then I saw Cost Plus Drugs and it was $73. And now we can afford it. And you saved my life because I was going to stop taking my medication because I couldn't afford it any longer. And I get that all the time. I mean, that's motivating. That's like,
you're changing someone's life. You're changing you're helping not just them, their family, their outcomes.
Everything, right? We've helped millions. We've impacted millions of people. I mean, it's just, it's just amazing. And so, yeah, really just making that work and scaling it. That's my mission.
That's incredible. Yeah. Mark, I really appreciated you coming on the podcast.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
And now I actually wanted to go through a couple of my favorite biohacks.
Okay, let's go.
So I know you're really fussy about supplements, so am I. So I like things that really are researched and studied. So first I'm going to make you take a shot with me of something. Okay. So have you heard of phospholipids? Okay. So we have trillions of cells in our bodies, and each cell membrane is surrounded by essentially this lipid membrane around it. And the lipid membrane is essentially made of different phospholipids. So basically over time from our environment, water we're drinking, seed oils in our food, all that stuff, these lipid membranes are being broken down basically. And what happens is the bad stuff can then get in. You can't detox correctly. The heavy metals get in, the herbicides, the pesticides, everybody sits there. And when your cells are not healthy, disease happens on a cellular level. So this is a company that I discovered a long time ago. They've been in business for almost 30 plus years.
Damn, okay.
And they started by the grandfather. They're going to clinical trials, and it's not a new thing on the block.
They're going to clinical trials now, or they've already?
Yeah, they're going to. They're starting them now.
Good.
So 30 plus years of research into this. This really started to help people that were chronically ill, kids who had autism, families who were really, really sick, and helping them detox and lose inflammation and get them back to a balanced state. So this PC, it's a liquid form. You can also do it in an IV, but the liquid is really amazing. And this has all this different spectrum of phospholipids in it. So I'm going to give you a shot of this.
How do you know it's working?
I know it's working because I test my blood. So I do stool tests and blood tests and urine tests, and I can check my toxin burden load going down.
You see it changing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I have the tests I have that I can show it. It's really cool. So when I first started this, before I'd taken it, I was really, really high in certain heavy metals, glyphosate, and a lot of things came up on my test. 6 months after doing it consistently, twice a day, because I had to go on a certain protocol with a functional medicine doctor, I saw my levels change exceptionally.
That's great. Yeah.
And then I was doing the IV version as well, but I think at home works better. So
and
I'm
what about
interested
your regular blood tests and everything? Any changes there?
There were being improvements. So my hormone panels obviously increased. So I'm 42. I'm going through a holistic fertility journey. And I saw that I started ovulating again and my female hormones started firing again because I'm lowering my overall toxin burden load in my body. So my liver started functioning better. My liver's functioning better. My thyroid is obviously working better.
And you all your blood counts.
Yeah, and I'm working with a practitioner. She's an incredible doctor in Morristown.
Like I test my blood every
of course. Yeah,
right?
that's how you know.
How you know.
I know, and you should do the test. There's a mosaic test and a couple of others. You take it before and after, and you measure yourself, and it shows your overall toxin burden going down. So
let's go.
I have to go. Okay, so we're going to take it. You have to swivel it a little bit. So it's called PC. You have to swivel it, though, otherwise it sticks to the bottom. Okay. Cheers. Different type of shot for you. What do you think?
Not bad.
Right?
Real taste. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get you to take this and see how you feel.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that I tried that I love is this OMNIWave machine.
Okay.
So basically, have you heard of sound waves?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you tried anything like that?
I've tried red light stuff. That's
okay.
the deal. Yeah.
So we're going to get the technician to actually come over because I don't know how to use the machine myself. I've been doing treatments with these guys, and I'm doing it from a female longevity perspective because I'm interested in taking shockwave therapy and slowing down ovarian aging. So everything for me has come down to female health and longevity. So this is something I've been currently trying, and I thought we try it on you. So do you have an area that's in pain right now or anything uncomfortable?
I just have PRP on my shoulder, so we can try on my shoulder.
Okay, let's do it.
Okay, what we're going to do, this is
is this where they put the goo on there and then...
we're going to put a little bit of goo on there.
Oh, yeah, I've done this before, actually.
Did it work for you? How did it work?
It helps some, right? But it hurts when you find the part that really is bad, yeah.
What's amazing about this device, it's brand new to the market, and it's the first device that does not cause any pain.
Good, because the other gooey one, yeah, it was brutal. It would hurt a lot.
Let's give it a try.
Again, you have to rate this from a 1 to 10 because when I did it, it didn't hurt me. So
Scale of 1 to 10 right now. How's your shoulder?
You can hear a click. It's bone on bone, but the PRP's helped a lot. Yeah.
Okay, so show me where the pain is if you
right there.
To it. Okay, I'm going to put this goo on.
We love trying the biohacks around here.
Yeah, this is the exact same stuff that I did before.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
If you scream, it's not my fault.
Right, no, for sure.
It's not my fault.
No, where I went to get this done, there'd be people lined up doing it, and you'd see all the grimacing.
We're going to start it. So let me know when I'm on the spot.
Okay.
I'm going to start it up.
Is this an injury from basketball?
I was lifting. I was like an idiot. I was trying to set a personal record, so I was trying to rep out 225s and nail myself. Yeah, that's the spot.
That's the spot?
Right there, yeah.
Oh, God.
No, but I could feel the
Is it more painful?
Tapping, a warming.
No, I can feel like a little burst, a little electrical burst.
Okay, so what we're doing is bringing in more.
Yeah, I can feel it now. Yeah, I can feel it now.
Way to reduce it? No, I mean, that's not in pain. You're not grimacing.
I mean, it's not fun, but
A little bit better?
yeah, a little bit better.
So I was fascinated in this technology from like everything for me is about female longevity and health. So I want to see the correlation between doing these treatments where it brings more blood flow to slowing down
So that's
birth
basically what it
aging.
does. It brings more
Yeah.
foam in there.
Brings in more blood flow, more nutrients, more collagen, and it starts repairing at the cellular level. So it's basically
Yeah, I did it for like 3 weeks, I think, before. And it helped some, but I needed more.
this goes really deep. And but yeah, the IRI's kind of, it's not going to be painful like the other devices.
Yeah, it feels a lot better. But yeah, when you hit the spot, it hurts there.
And it takes us under 5 minutes. So I was like,
No, I know. I
Yeah.
would sit there, right, and just watch TV or whatever
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, this will take about 3 minutes for all those done.
what's the pain level right now?
5.
Okay, 5. Good.
We started.
No, it went from 1 and then you found the spot. Yeah, it's not even a 5 anymore.
So we're bringing in the blood flow, good nutrients. So it's really like non-invasive regenerative medicine or non-invasive PRP.
No, like I said, I've tried it before. So yeah, I like it.
You have to tell me how you feel after trying this. Okay.
Let's go lift.
Yeah.
off here.
Let's go lift.
Where are you going to after this? Back to Dallas?
Back to Dallas.
Okay, so you're going to be like, go back and lift.
Let's
You'll
go.
email me. You'll let me know how you
Workplace
did.
inside.
Yeah.
Look how that feels.
Yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, it's just like
Feel a difference?
not yet, but like I said, I've done this before. Yeah.
So I'm going to definitely send you, I want you to do the tests that go with checking for all your toxin burden level. I'm going to send you everything on that. Now, the one last thing, because it really annoys me how the supplement industry makes claims that are bullshit. And you research
That's why I
comes up.
invest in a lab door. Yeah. Lab door.
So what's your take on NAD? NAD plus?
I'm not, nothing I've seen says it works.
Thank you. Okay. So NAD, the actual molecule, is too big to actually enter the tissue. So whether you're doing IVs, supplements of pure NAD, or taking injections, it actually doesn't fully work because it can't create that ATP energy for you because it can't actually get into your
Yeah, I
tissues.
didn't know why it didn't work. I just knew that. Nobody ever said it worked. People would like just pound them and
No.
yeah.
And it's actually not good for you. So if you have a, genetic disposition to something else, it can cause more issues. But research has shown that the precursors that are very cheap, that are much cheaper than actually doing the IVs, the injections and all that stuff, the precursors actually work really well. So NMN and NR in really high dose, in the right amount of formulation, the right dose with antioxidants, because the minute you have oxidative stress in your body and it hits, it starts going to work on that versus doing what it needs to do. So there's another company I'm going to give you that is tested.
Okay.
And I want you to try it out. I've given you a 3-month supply.
Cool.
These guys, their lead scientist is out of Israel. He's brilliant, Dr. Andrew Saltzman. And I want you to try it out for 90 days and tell me what you think.
Okay.
But it's the precursors. It's not actually NAD+, right? So they have a lot of great white papers and stuff on this. I think NAD...
I'll chat GPT it.
Yeah, ChatGPT. But you know what annoys me so much is because all these celebrities and everybody's endorsing NAD+, 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 but it is so freaking expensive. And
It is
doesn't...
expensive. Like,
it's
I looked
super-
at it, was like...
Each
yeah,
IV is like
$50.
$1,500, and at-home injections are also like $600-700.
Damn, no, I hadn't tried injections.
Oh, you just take them and you shoot them in.
No.
So I'm like a walking science experiment. I try everything. So I'm like, wait, this is not working. This is the
guinea
research.
pig.
Yeah, walking guinea pig for sure. And so these guys have done a really great job of doing a lot of incredible research and coming up with something that's cost effective, works extremely well, is at a really high dose, is mixed with
I'll go through it all.
antioxidants.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So I've given you a little goodie bags of things that I think you'll like. So thank you again for coming on the show. Thank you so much.
You did a great job.
Thank you for tuning in to Biohack-it. If you've enjoyed today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a short review. It really helps us reach more listeners just like you. Follow us on Instagram at biohack-it for exclusive content and the latest updates. Remember, your health is in your hand and curiosity heals.